Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, we're reading a number of verses, and it's the talks between the Lord and Ramananda Roy. And these talks took place in Vidyanagar, is where they met. And they met, anyway, this is a coin from Vidyanagar, which was in circulation at the time that they met. And on one side is Garuda, if you have a good imagination. And on the other side is the name of a king. If I throw it to you, it's a small denomination copper coin. But it's sometimes just good to see that these things are actually historical. So that's a coin that Ramananda Roy, who was the governor of that area, could have given to someone as payment for services rendered. Right. So no one wants to lead the chanting? It's up to me, is it?
So we can do 91 to 94.
You can try? No, we'll do this guy. Yeah. Brave man. No, not all of them, just that one. Let's keep it simple. Yeah. According to Lord Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, as all surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly. Everyone follows my path in all respects, O son of Pritha. Text 92. In Srimad Bhagavatam, it is said that Lord Krishna cannot proportionately reciprocate devotional service in the Madhurya Ras. Therefore, he always remains a debtor to such devotees. Text 93. When the gopis were overwhelmed with dissatisfaction due to Lord Krishna's absence from the Rasa Lila, Krishna returned to them and told them, "My dear gopis, our meeting is certainly free of all material contamination. I must admit that in many lives it would be impossible for me to repay my debt to you, because you have cut off the bondage of family life just to search for me. Consequently, I am unable to repay you. Therefore, please be satisfied with your honest activities in this regards." And then this text. Although Krishna's unparalleled beauty is the topmost sweetness of love of Godhead, his sweetness increases unlimitedly when in the company of the gopis. Consequently, Krishna's exchange of love with the gopis is the topmost perfection of love of God. Om Ganati Marandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Militamyana Tasmai Sri Gurave Nama Sri Chaitanya Manovishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Sadati Swapadantikam. And the purport here is a very short purport to that final verse. Krishna and his devotees become perfectly intimate in conjugal love of Godhead. In other mellows, the Lord and his devotees do not enjoy transcendental bliss as perfectly. The next verse will illustrate this point, so you'll have to wait till next week to hear that verse. So this great punchline. So these talks, as we understand, they took place in Vidyanagar. Lord Chaitanya was advised by Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya to meet Ramananda Roy. And Ramananda Roy was, they say in those days, the governor of Madras, the area that is now Madras. So he was a high government official. And Lord Chaitanya met him, and with the blessings of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, started to speak with him confidentially, because Sarvabhauma had told him there's no one knows more about the relationship with Krishna and the gopis, these intimate discourses, than Ramananda Roy. You have to speak to him. And interestingly, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya had been an Advaitin philosopher, and is still quite famously well known in India as such. And he used to make fun of Ramananda Roy until he became a devotee. He thought Ramananda Roy was real, as they say in Hindi, Pagal Baba. He's real, just nonsense guy. Didn't understand anything because he talked about Krishna and the gopis and these, what are these things? But But after he met Lord Chaitanya, he began to realize that Ramananda Roy is the person who actually understood what was happening, what was going on. So he said to Lord Chaitanya, "It's only so much I can teach you. Really, you have to talk to him. He's the person." So Lord Chaitanya, in his tour of South India, he met with Ramananda Roy, and they got on immediately. And Lord Chaitanya started to ask him, immediately, "Tell me what I need to know. Tell me the topmost thing." And then he started to tell him, and he said, "No, tell me something more. Tell me more. Tell me something different. Tell me more. Is there more?" And he started to, to me it was like, Govardhan, when Krishna became the Govardhan hill and people were feeding the Govardhan, and Govardhan was saying, "Anayor, Anayor, give me more, give me more." And Lord Chaitanya was saying, "Give me more, because this was the nectar, this is what he was hungry for. And he was trying to find someone who he could speak to. Sometimes it's very difficult. We understand as devotees and people in every religion, or maybe these days, if you're religious at all, it's difficult to talk about it, because people seemingly are not interested. And so you have to dumb yourself down, but you're hungry for association with someone you can really talk to. And when you meet a religious person, that's great, we can talk about religious things, but when you meet a devotee of Krishna, then we can talk about Krishna things. Then it becomes more satisfying in our hearts. We become relieved by our capacity to be able to talk about these things, our ability, the opportunity. So Lord Chaitanya had this opportunity, and he was so hungry to hear more. And it's very, these talks for me, the Chaitanya Charitamrita is such a wonderful text. It is our whole philosophy and theology all laid out. And it's in the form of a biography, but it's so much more than that. It's actually, Krishnadas Kaviraj is laying out the whole tradition. And he's just got it all in there. And it's such a work of art that it's an effective biography, which in those days was a rare thing. But it's also expanding on the theology. What is our relationship with God? What is the point? What was Lord Chaitanya trying to say? What was his mission? So it wasn't just about some dates and times and places. And they met at Vidyanagar. And that's, big deal. That wasn't the big deal. The big deal was he met Ramananda Roy, this person. And then this conversation that took place. And then this conversation is one of the most important conversations in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. It's like the conversation with Lord Chaitanya and Sanatana Goswami. Again, another very important conversation. If we read the Bhagavad Gita, the conversation between Krishna and Arjuna, the Guru disciple, and then we read Sanatana Goswami, the Guru disciple, Lord Chaitanya speaking with him, then one is the high school and the other is the graduate. So it's the same conversation, just on different levels. So Lord Krishna is saying to Arjuna, Natu evaham jatunasam natwamna me janaripad. There was never a time when they did not exist. We will always exist individually, eternally, and making that point. But the point that Lord Chaitanya, and this was the first text of teaching in the Gita, and the first teaching of Lord Chaitanya to Sanatana Goswami, because Sanatana's inquiry was, "Who am I?" And he said, "Jivera Swarupai Krishna Nityadas." So it's not only you, but everyone. Jivera Swarupai, the Swarup of all the jivas, is Krishna Nityadas. You are an eternal servant of Krishna. So you have Arjuna's thing, that's the first understanding that you are an eternal person. You are eternal. Just get that down. But the next thing is you're eternally a servant of Krishna. That's a much more profound development of that same message, but this is the graduate understanding, shall we say. So this discussion with Sanatana Goswami is very important for us to be able to understand our tradition. Similarly, this talk between the Lord and Ramananda Roy is very important for us. Because in the beginning, the first thing Ramananda Roy says, well, Vedic culture, Varnashram, is very important. And Lord Chaitanya says, it's material. Zip. It's like, if we imagine a big screen, and we're going zip, delete, delete. And he's just going through everything. He says, becoming detached, yes. Becoming knowledgeable, yes. Tell me something I don't know. Tell me something more interesting than that. That's all the religious stuff you get at every pravachan, every class. Everyone is just saying that. Some guru is sitting there twiddling a rose going, we have to become detached. And it's, what does it mean? What do you do with that? So Lord Chaitanya says, tell me something significant. And now he has told him something significant. And if we only had permission to read the very next verse, we could hear Lord Chaitanya attesting to that point. But he said, all as I surrender, I reward accordingly. Everyone follows my path in all respects. But he says, one who, in this Madhurya Ras, then Krishna, so that's true, that's the Bhagavad Gita, but Krishna can't reciprocate with someone in Madhurya Ras. And Krishna then says to the gopis, I have to admit that in many lives it would be impossible for me to repay my debt to you, because you have cut off the bondage of family life just to search for me. And you've given up everything just to find me. Now, we can say, I did that. I joined the temple. Or I became initiated. But was it just to find Krishna in the same way that the gopis did it? Or were there all kinds of conditions involved? Little contract we make with Krishna. So I do all this and then I, maybe go back to Godhead or, we could do a deal here. I'll do a bit of chanting, I'll become happy. We have expectations. The gopis didn't have any expectations because that's what love is. They just wanted to give to Krishna. They wanted to see Krishna pleased, to see him happy. Once they saw the smile on Krishna's face, that's what made them happy. Once Krishna was happy, then they were happy. It wasn't, show me the happiness and then I'll do more or some such thing. And if we give up stuff, then Krishna is pleased. There's no doubt about that. Krishna loves us, and he loves us always, and there's nothing can interrupt that love. But when we reciprocate, when we give up everything, then Krishna, in the mood of love, is so indebted that he doesn't feel he can repay. Because that's the mood of love. There's no deal to be done. Krishna can't repay because it's not a deal. It's just how he feels about us. Who doesn't want someone in this world to feel that way about us? We practically live for that. That there's someone in the world that loves us unreservedly. And Krishna's the only person really offering that. All the rest of us have little bells and whistles to put on the relationship. Little reciprocations we would expect, even if unstated. But, there's an expectation, and we're going to get hurt. And there's so much nonsense that we do, and Krishna doesn't put any pass on it at all. He just ignores it. He loves us anyway, because he knows we're just an illusion. He knows it's just a passing phase. He understands the bigger picture. He doesn't want anything from us. And that's, if we think about how we preach. We're a preaching movement. We're a missionary movement. We want to help other people, introduce them to this. And that's the mood in which it's done, effectively. There's so many moods in which it's done. But if we want to do it effectively, we'll do it as Krishna does it. We'll take a lesson from his approach. And his approach is to love unreservedly. He's not judgmental. He's not righteous. He's humble. Always, just look at this humility. It's impossible for me to repay my debt to you because you have cut off the bondage of family life just to search for me. Such humility. He's God. He can demand stuff. He can say, if you don't do it, I'm going to make your life a misery. And we wonder sometimes why our life is a misery. Why would God do that to us? Well, God hasn't done it to us. We made all the choices to get where we are. That's our whole understanding. God isn't punishing us. He doesn't have a book and he's writing down notes on our performance. He doesn't care about any of that stuff. So then why do we care about it when we approach another person? So how do we enthuse someone to develop Krishna consciousness? We have to love them. We have to learn how to love. At least with the understanding we have at the moment of the love that Krishna has for us. That's what we can share. Because bhakti means sharing, heart to heart. And bhakti means to give. The word bhaj means to share. It means to give. So you're giving, not taking. It's not, I'm not preaching to you so that you will become a devotee, so that you will convert, so that I will get credit for converting you. It's got nothing to do, it's not a transaction. It's just a giving. There's no expectation of return. We have no idea what that person is going to do with this sharing. We're giving something of ourselves, and they may or may not become a devotee. They may laugh in our face or spit in our eye. And that's what Nityananda Prabhu and Haridas Thakur experienced when they went preaching. We may hearken back to the good old days of Vedic culture and the time of Lord Chaitanya when everyone was all very pious and everything like that. But that's not what Nityananda and Haridas Thakur experienced. They were the first preachers in our movement. And they went out and they got beaten. And Lord Nityananda had an alcohol pot thrown at him. An alcohol pot. I mean, it could have been treacle. It could have been anything but alcohol. Come on, guys. So, and cut his head and all that kind of stuff. They went through those trials. They went around knocking on people's doors. Do we imagine for a second that everyone opened their door and said, "Oh, Lord Nityananda, it's you"? They didn't have a clue who this guy was coming around, "Please chant Hare Krishna." Well, yeah. Come on, I got bills to pay. I got a field to till. You're going to help me till my field? You're going to help me pay my bills? I mean, let's get practical here. They were meeting what we meet every day. Yet they didn't stop, and they did it with humility. And when Lord Chaitanya came to take out Jagai Madai, he got annoyed because his friend had been hit. And Lord Nityananda said, no, that's not what we're here for. That's not how we're going to do it. And that's laying down the path of preaching for us. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna shows us his method of teaching is so inspiring. He's giving Arjuna all these options. Why not this? Why not this? Why not this? And in the end says, no, you decide. And again, it's a kind of, hang on a minute. Are you abnegating your responsibility here, Krishna? I mean, seriously? You're going to let him decide for himself? He's only a Kshatriya, for God's sake. What does he know? But he did. Because he had faith in Arjuna. It was a personal relationship. He wasn't trying to manipulate him. He knew that if he presented the truth, Arjuna would take it. And it's the same with us. We're presented the truth, and sometime we take it. When is that time? I don't know. My friend Madhu Mangal, first time he met the devotees was here in London. He was a skinhead, and he was attached to a gang, and they went to Leicester Square, and there was another skinhead gang coming. And they were all in strange orange robes and beating drums and, singing songs, and they couldn't figure out who are these skinheads. So he went over and kicked one to start a fight. It was like gang on gang. And of course he didn't kick back, so he was like, oh, God. He thought, waste of space. That was his first introduction to Krishna consciousness. That was the first opportunity Krishna gave him. Hear the wonderful holy name. He went over, what is it? Kick, It's like a dog. We're sitting here giving the class, and a dog comes in and goes around and sniffs all over the place, trying to figure out, what are they doing? They're not eating, they're not sleeping, they're not mating, they're not defending. What are they doing? It's like, what a waste of time. And he wheezes on the asan and walks out. I mean, does something useful. So when is it that we take the opportunity? How many times have we been offered the opportunity? In how many lives? And now we've taken some opportunity. What other opportunities are we not seeing that Krishna is giving us every day? He doesn't stop. He's shouting it from the rooftops. And we're just not hearing. It's just some noise. What's the noise? So how do we tune in to Krishna? So that we can pick up these messages, so we can open up our heart. And the way is, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati said that preaching is life. Because when we preach, and we have to understand his definition of preach, and Prabhupada's definition. It's sharing heart to heart. It's the sharing of bhakti, the sharing of love. And it's not an intellectual thing. It's not that we have to know the philosophy, and that we have to quote X number of verses, that we have to have all these formulas for preaching, and that we have to put on the image of being pukka, and go, Srila Prabhupada said, and we all develop old man's Bengali accents. And that's, if you don't preach like that, it's not effective or something. You preach from the heart. It doesn't matter who you are, where you are. Ramananda Roy was considered a Sudra by caste. So, I mean, from a Vedic point of view, why is Lord Chaitanya listening to him? This is not about Vedic anything. This is not about Varnashram. That's irrelevant in this conversation. In fact, it's the first thing that's dismissed. The message is bhakti. That's crystal clear. The message of our movement is bhakti. That's crystal clear. If we decide that it's some other message, or there's some prerequisite, we're actually in illusion. We've actually missed the point. We haven't read the text. We haven't opened our heart. We've actually closed it to make it some cultural phenomena, some social proposition, some intellectual formulation. And it all sounds intelligent and plausible, but none of it is relevant. And that's the gist of this conversation. It's all very interesting, but not relevant spiritually. The message is to become an eternal servant of Krishna. That's the goal. That's a clear goal. To realize we are an eternal servant of Krishna already. And to begin to act like that in whatever little ways we can. Just to remember every day, I am an eternal servant of Krishna. And every day we're being pulled to serve so many other things. Our mind, our senses, our colleagues, our husbands, our wives, our children, so many other people. And there's all kinds of services we have to do to keep the show on the road, to keep the family going, to keep food on the table, and all the things that we have to do. And that's fine. But that doesn't fall outside our service to Krishna. Service to Krishna is very practical because it's based on love. It's how we act. It's how we speak. It's how we think about people. And it's meditating on how to change ourselves in such a way that we can act with love, with affection, with kindness. And that's a struggle, because we'll see every day how we react against that. The material default position is very negative. And it gets more and more negative if we don't control it. So it's a meditation to try and act in such a way that we're not envious, that we're not anxious for honor from others, that we're ready to give honor to everybody and anyone. That we do consider ourselves Lord in the straw on the street. People can say what they like, they can do what they like, it doesn't matter. That's the mood of Lord Nityananda, and that's the mood of a preacher. And when you meet someone like that, it's so inspiring. They don't even have to speak. It's so inspiring. It's so effective. It's so powerful. our effective preaching will be seen by what we do and what we say and how we conduct ourselves, our character. The character of a devotee, the character of a Vaishnava. And that's why Krishnadas Kaviraj says, take this verse, Trinada Pisa Nichina Tororiva Sahishnana, take this verse and hang it around your neck. He doesn't take any other verse. He doesn't focus on anything else. He focuses on this verse. If you can understand this verse, meditate on it every day, and then through the day, try and practice it. And it's so difficult. We always have to get a word in. We always have to have something to say that's more intelligent than the last sentence. When we're preaching to someone, we're not listening to them. We're not understanding their condition. Krishna understood Arjuna's condition. He had a conversation with him. He said, what about this? And Arjuna would say, I can't do that. And what about this? He said, I don't understand what you're talking about. I can't control my mind. He understood. He gave him options and he got a reaction. We're not interested in a reaction. Someone's saying something and we're just formulating the next verse, the next shloka to throw at them from our Sankirtan belt. You know, dun, dun, superpower. Throw a shloka at the guy. You know, and somehow, buff, becomes a devotee. And we go and take the credit. Sankirtan scores read out in front of the deities. That's not preaching. That's just nonsense. Preaching means to be humble. Preaching means every single person we meet has something to offer that we can learn from. Because everyone is a representative of Krishna. We see Krishna in everyone. We have to be humble. We have no choice. We meet Krishna everywhere. And every person we meet, and we're just sharing what little bit we know. I've told the story here before, but I'll tell it again of back to Jerry in Dublin many, many years ago. Jerry was an alcoholic, and he used to come to the temple and join regularly. And then obviously he left regularly. And he'd join and he would be so pukka. And he'd get up at 2 o'clock in the morning and have all his rounds chanted before Mangal Arti. And go through the whole, and then he'd go out in Sankirtan and do book distribution all day. And he'd do that for about 3 weeks. And then he'd disappear. And we'd find him in a doorway somewhere. And there's nothing we could do for him. He was just, Jerry was on a bender. And then he'd come back and he'd join again. And he was so inoffensive that you couldn't not let him be around. He knew he was an alcoholic. He knew he was a mess. He was just trying his best under the circumstances, very difficult circumstances, difficult karma that he had to deal with. But he wanted to be a devotee. So one time he'd left the temple, but he still had a few books in his bag. He went to the pub, got nicely plastered, went out on the street, but he found the books and he thought, I should give out these books. So he was out on O'Connell Bridge and he stopped a guy and he gave him, he said, excuse me, take this book. Don't look at me. I'm drunk. But this book will change your life. This book will change your life. You won't believe it. You know, and he was so convincing because he was so drunk, you know, that it was so incongruous, his message and his state, that the fellow took the book and read it and became a devotee. And interestingly, that guy was the Madhu Mangal who kicked the devotees in Leicester Square. But he said he became convinced because he said he was so humble. And he used that word. It was just so impressive. He just kept on saying, don't look at me. I can't preach. I can't do this. But the book, he can do it. He can do it. And that's not how we preach. We preach to make ourselves look, I have made the right choice, person. I'm on the right path, look at me, person. Follow my example, person. That's who we are. That's not preaching. It's interesting. It can make people go, oh, you're very intelligent and all that. But it's not effective preaching. It can help people in a little way. It's not valueless. But it's not what we're striving for. It's not what's going to change people's hearts. It might influence them psychologically, emotionally, might influence them intellectually, make them think in a different way, and that's great. But to be a devotee, we need to have an experience in the heart. And we've all had the experience when you meet someone who has no religious experience in their life. They weren't brought up in a religious family. They have no religious inquiry. They're really not interested. It's very difficult to talk to them. What's the point? There is no point in talking to them about something they're not interested in. It becomes a one-sided, boring conversation. So when you meet someone who's genuinely not interested in spirituality, and you understand it when you understand that they don't have an experience. And spiritual life is when we have an experience that has transformed us, that is, the way we think, the way we act, the way we look at the world just becomes completely different. It's changed utterly. We can't be the same again. There's a famous poem by T.S. Eliot called The Journey of the Magi. The Magi are the three wise men who came to see Jesus. And it's a very nice poem, and they come and they see Jesus. But then in the last verse of the poem, they're going home, and they realize that they can't really go home again. They'll go home, but it's not the same. They've had this experience that they're going to have great difficulty sharing because it was an experience. And it's humbling to understand that it's very difficult to share an experience. The person has to have it for themselves. They have to have their own experience. How can we share it enough that they become enthused? How can we share our conviction the way back to Jerry shared his conviction? His personal conviction is what got it, not the fact that he was drunk. That was unattractive, totally disqualifying, everything. But he was the most effective preacher. Rahamurti in Dublin in the 1970s, he went to Belfast on a Sunday to do book distribution, took the bus up, got out, and didn't understand that Belfast is so Christian that on a Sunday everything was dead. So he walked into the centre of town, nothing. And he thought, oh dear. So he walked up the Lisburn Road, a big long road, nobody. He took a right turn. Oh, that's a left turn. He took a left turn. And he went to the first house he saw, knocked on the door, and this young chap opened the door and he sold him a book. And he came home and he went back to the temple, and everyone said, well, how did you do? He said, I sold a book, a single book. And the devotees were really good devotees. We had no money in those days. And he had spent all the money on the bus, which was a big deal, to go up to Belfast. So it was like total failure. So in his humility, he decided, yes, total failure, what can I do? But the person he gave the book to was Martin Fleming, an architect student, who later became initiated as a Kundari Das. So it's just, he just did this thing and he just went up and failed utterly. And we don't know what's going on. We don't know what Krishna's plan is. He just went up and knocked on a door and pleaded with him to take a book because he was having such a bad day. And that's more or less why a Kundari took the book. Just the poor guy, he felt so bad for him. He was genuinely upset that he wasn't doing well on book distribution, and he just bought a book on that basis. So this message of Ramananda Roy, we've come to the stage where we're talking about Madhurya Ras, and now Lord Chaitanya says, now I want more of this. Just stick with this. Now go deeper with this, please. Now we've hit the point. And the point for us to remember is bhakti. Whatever all the other discourses about Vedic culture and this and that and Varnashram and all that kind of stuff, it's not as important as the message of we are an eternal servant of Krishna, and Krishna loves us, and we need and want to love Krishna. We want to love and be loved. And Krishna wants to love and be loved. And we can be part of that. That's what the whole message is about. That's what the whole movement is about. That's why it's Radha Gokulananda. That's all Prabhupada spoke about. And the whole Bhagavad Gita from beginning to end, he said Bhakti, 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 Bhakti. When you read the Bhagavad Gita in the Sanskrit or something, you'll see that it's Karma Yoga and Dhyana Yoga and Astanga Yoga and there's all kinds of others. It's not Bhakti, Bhakti, Bhakti. But Prabhupada's point was, the message of the Gita is Bhakti, therefore you establish it from the beginning. That's a proper Vaishnava commentary on the Gita. That's as the tradition acts. But Prabhupada wanted to make the point to us that we are a Bhakti movement. This is our message, is Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. How to love Krishna. How to accept Krishna's love for us. That was Prabhupada's whole message. And if we deviate from that into all kinds of other things, then we're not representing Srila Prabhupada. And we're not focusing on the point. And with that, we will end.